Hello, Denise. How are you?
Hi, great, great. Wonderful. It's
Well,
Friday.
exactly. It's our third actual Fit Friday community chat as we activate the state of Arizona with some interesting challenges and, an overall plea to individuals and group leaders to step up to the plate. Population health is a team sport. So, what role do you play? It is a weekly interactive session. This is going live on Facebook and eventually YouTube. But there is a QR code down here at the bottom, and we will be touching upon topics and certain access to challenges, and it is free to join. So if you are watching this and want to play along as we earn points, as we move, learn, serve, and earn throughout the state of Arizona, and set up some challenges, both intrastate and interstate against Pennsylvania, Ohio, Nairobi, as we kick into this reality health games concept. Join along. So to get started, my name is Lucy Howell. I'm the founder of the Force for Health Network, and I am based in Tucson, Arizona. And I've got my partner here, Denise Meredith, who is based in Phoenix, Arizona. And together we will be hosting heroes and highlights, and we'll create this platform to discuss some really important issues that may stand in the way of improving population health outcomes for everybody. Since we are a little bit new, it might be worth just stating what we actually are, right? So we are a physician-led social media platform that's attached to a virtual health academy. Again, there's tons of free content to earn points and prizes towards, but if you'd like to engage more, you can sign up for challenges and fundraisers, and then we'll try and pull it all together in a mixed media platform and help get it out there. Starting with weekly broadcasts, monthly roundtables with leaders, quarterly meetups, biannual print, and really setting up some competition. Last week, on August 31st, in case you're just now hearing about this, no worries, because this is a fairly new initiative. This was just launched August 31st with a concurrent event out of the Better Business Bureau office in Phoenix and out of the Tucson Metro Chamber of Commerce, along with the Tucson Hispanic Chamber out of Tucson. So my partner is not on, but I want to give him credit. Dr. Rob Gillio is the co-founder of the Force for Health Network. He has 30 plus years, trained pulmonologist, played important roles in the Hurricane Katrina, 9/11, and has really been at the leading edge of population health initiatives for the last 30 years. I'm going to let Denise go ahead and introduce herself, just for those that don't know. So Denise, I come to the table as just a regular mom. I'm just a regular citizen who's just trying to step up to the plate and do my role and challenge people to own their own health and perhaps address some of those disparity issues. Remind us all why you're excited to partner on My Healthy Arizona and why you're here.
Well, first of all, Lucy is very humble. She's not just any ordinary soccer mom. So anyway, let's get that straight. But anyway, again, my name is Denise Meredith. I'm a Brooklyn girl, born in Brooklyn. I've lived all over the United States. Decided Phoenix was the best spot I'd been in. I spent my first 29 years with the federal government, Department of Interior, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And which was sort of wonderful experience outdoors. People don't know about Bureau of Land Management, but it's the largest land management agency in the United States. So everything that's not a forest, a national forest, or a national park, or something like that is Bureau of Land Management. So we have 14 million acres right here in Arizona, but 263 million acres nationwide. So it was quite a job. I was the first woman they ever hired. That was an experience. And I wound up being the deputy director of the entire agency back during the Clinton administration. So I had 10,000 employees, 200 offices, and $1 billion budget. So that was fun, but it was nice to move out to Arizona where it was a little more relaxed. And I had a I was able to do things like designate national monuments, Arizona Trail, got that started. And well, we'll talk about in a little bit, we'll talk about how all of that impacts your health. But I will say it was a great experience, 29 years for me. And then I got to retire early, which not too many people get to do, but I got to retire early and start my own public relations firm, Denise Meredith Consultants, which has sort of evolved into World's Best Connectors. But what we do is work with other CEOs. So it's a CEO to CEO relationship, and we help them do what they don't like to do, don't want to do, but they know they have to do. And I was really thrilled when Lucy asked me to be involved with this because we really didn't have a health aspect to what we were doing. We were doing the usual stuff, tech and a little bit of diversity and a little bit of that. But health underlies everything. If a CEO is not healthy, the company is not healthy. So I think this is a great opportunity for executives to learn more about what is going on and also to help others learn about their health.
Yeah, it's really my intention with partnering with the world's best connectors and your kind of aggregate and hyper focus on CEOs is really to make sure, since many communities are driven by top down CEO influence, perspective, focus. And if the CEOs don't know what a social determinant of health are, or what a CEO can do to perhaps impact his future healthcare cost, possibly by looking at K through 12 output and getting involved, or better supporting the families of their employees. So many things go into CEO mindset. And really, My Healthy Arizona is all about bringing those leaders to the table from the public sector, from the private sector, from the healthcare sector, and from the educational sector, and see if we can break through some of these silos that is very common, very common across the country. But our hypothesis is that those who collaborate better should thrive and sustain and really be thriving communities, both healthfully and wealthfully. Right. I do want to go ahead and talk to you about your perspectives and the role of civic. Just as a quick heads up, our second segment will be joined by one of the North region. We've kind of taken the state of Arizona and we've chopped it in half. We've got kind of the North counties will be considered the North team, and the Southern counties are the South team. And both Denise and I have pulled together a advisory council, or we're in the process of pulling together leaders from those various sectors that I just mentioned. So we'll have one of her advisors on, Dr. Alay Jerez, on our second segment, talking about addressing gaps and working more collaboratively together. Our third segment hopefully will be joined by my partner in crime, Dr. Robert Gillio, to talk about, again, how leaders can step up and perhaps compete against each other for some fun and prizes. We'll talk about some STEAM teams, and then we'll round out the segment today with our other partner, the Citizenship Health Institute. You'll see that logo alongside us, which is a teen empowerment program addressing social determinants of health that has been pretty successful throughout the state of Ohio, which is what we're trying to do now. But that's the lay of the land. Denise, I wanted to kind of have these conversations with you. Can't believe it's 2:13 already.
Right.
But okay.
One question at least. It's fine.
Exactly. Well, what years were you here as the state director?
I was here I was state director from 1995 to 2002.
1995, 2002. And within that time period, there were some things that you looked at with the Arizona Trail. There were some things that you looked at with identifying some monuments, and maybe even saw the seeds or the activity with Tempe and all that growth with the sports. Let's just talk about the trail. Okay. Because what was the initial interest in looking at the trail, and maybe why should we as citizens be more aware about why our public officials should keep that stuff up for us?
Yeah, there's a lot of lessons that we learned from the whole history of the Arizona Trail. One, a basic one, I think, is that any individual can make a difference. And it was a certain individual that used to hike that got it in his head about that maybe we can go all the way from the northern part of the state to the southern part of the state on a trail, and how exciting that would be. And then they had some just very dedicated, and you have to be dedicated at that time during that period, really dedicated people to that trail. And they would try to maintain it themselves along the way and things like that. But it didn't have the national recognition that it really deserved. So when I arrived, recreation, we were still in the 5C era. People who maybe baby boomers that went to school here remember the 5Cs, citrus and cotton and copper. um, and those are all important industries, but the world was started to change. And by the time I moved here in 1995, and Bruce Babbitt, who was my boss back East, who used to be the governor, he said, "You need to go out there because they need a change agent. They need some help in making that change." So when I got out here, I found that recreation. I'd ask people where they go hiking, where they go camping. Maybe California, Utah, New Mexico. Nobody mentioned Arizona.
Hmm.
And there's a good reason for that. A lot of the campgrounds were taken over by gangs, and there was very low maintenance. The state didn't have much money, so they couldn't really maintain, keep the houses clean, blah, blah, blah. So there was no impetus, there was no reason to go outside in Arizona. Not to mention it's hot. But anyway, there was no real reason to go out there. So I made that, so that became my mission to upgrade recreation. So an obvious one is to look at things where you can get national attention, national funding to do things. Arizona Trail, think about it. How many states can you even envision going from the northern border to the south on a trail? Arizona was still a young, open state, very low population when I got here in 95. So that was actually sort of a doable idea. How I hoped it, the group, the Arizona Trail Association, they were doing a great job, continue to do a great job by themselves. But I just thought they needed a little oomph from the top, so to speak, and a little bit of more. I'm a very PR oriented person, public relations oriented person, and nobody knew about it. They could be standing on the trail and not know that they're on the Arizona Trail. So I developed, helped them develop more of a public outreach program. People could adopt a mile of the trail and donate money towards that, and really get people involved. We had events all along the trail, which was new because, like I said, the people right in the community, right next door, they had no idea what you were talking about. So we had events that involved the local communities. Well, look at this asset you have right here, really close to you, Arizona Trail. But I had the biggest help from Senator John McCain, who was my mentor at the time as well. Some people don't know about his environmental bent. He was very interested in, obviously loved the state of Arizona, particularly upstate. I call it upstate from New York, but anyway, particularly in northern Arizona. And he was all for anything we could do to. He helped me a lot when I was the state director to preserve important parts of the state. So we got together, we worked on a little piece of legislation. You have to keep it small in order to get it done. We had a little piece of legislation that we worked on that we eventually got passed. And so it was designated as a national recreation trail. And so that designation, it just helps. It just helps. It helps with funding. It helps with one thing I discovered being in the Bureau of Land Management here, a lot of our recreation tourism is from people from other countries. So the social media becomes really important. Internet was just coming into play, but people would come to the Bureau of Land Management office from Germany. They go, "I want to know how to try, how to go on this trail." So
Yeah.
it was fascinating. We put up some little kiosk and visitor center type operations, really to cater to international people because there were so many coming here and they wanted to know where to go hiking in Arizona. They'd heard about Arizona and they wanted to go. So that was how the Arizona Trail came into being. But the point I want to make with the trail is you never know what's right in your neighborhood and how you can take advantage of that. I was lucky in managing the Bureau of Land Management, so I had an agency full of people who loved their job. So how often do you get that? There were scientists doing science, and you sort of can't beat that. So they loved every aspect of the job. They loved taking people out to the trail. They love promoting the trail and the other parts of recreation here in Arizona. So this, and I, mentioned the local entities too. City of Phoenix does a great job. They have one of the biggest park systems in the country. Maricopa County does a big job. So I think what we hope to do is turn Arizona. You still have those basic industries that are very important to our economy, but people's individual health is important as well. And I think hiking is a very good way. Hiking, mountain biking is really popular. There are just some ways we need to encourage people to get out. It's unusual here. I grew up in New York where it's cold. Then I went to school in Ithaca where it was really cold, upstate New York. Here, except for the 3 months during the summer, you can be outside. An asset. That's a blessing. And to get people to take advantage of that is part of what we're about.
Well, and even, early morning summers are just beautiful, right? I mean, to just wake up and just have a nice 80. I like that feeling,
Mhm. Yeah.
at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. And then also, I also think that Arizona, some of the museums down here, I'm sure there's entities up in Phoenix and in northern Arizona that actually host guided night trails
Mhm.
during the summertime as well. So we truly are a outdoor state, and and maybe Dr. Lay can comment on this in our next segment, but the connection between outdoors, and nature and mental health and the appreciation of environment and Mother Earth is just so important that I just feel like we need to get back to. What I would love to do is work with you and perhaps identify. So, if those 43 dots up there, what does each dot represent? Is that a parking spot, an access point, or what are those
Um,
dots?
well, what we've have, and I think there's an event coming up pretty soon, Arizona Trail Day, in which people pick out one of those areas to hike. So those are hikeable types of areas. And it's pretty interesting. And there are difficult ones and there are easy ones. So you get to pick what parts of the trail you want to go on. But it's a really neat event that a lot of people participate in.
One of the things that I want to commit to you as we get My Healthy Arizona up off the ground is to actually gamify that. And
Okay.
so, over the course of the next semester, let's put those 43 spots
Okay.
into the system and we can give badges.
Oh, that's would be
If
great. Mhm.
our virtual scavenger hunt, that's an app that you can download for free. That is our Force for Health Go app. And then if you're at that trailhead or at that entrance, you might be able to find it, earn some points. Now, connectivity might be an issue, so there's a way to also take a selfie to prove that
Right.
you were there also. But
Oh,
that's part of what we want to go ahead and gift an
sure.
award in May. Say,
Mhm.
wow,
Yeah.
so and so hit 80% of the points of the Arizona Trail,
Yeah.
and really incentivize that. So I
So
wanted to talk
yeah,
to you about
I'll
that.
hook you up with the right people there that are running that. They'd love to do that. So
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, great. So again, part of what we're trying to do is just open up the dialogue. Denise obviously came from the public sector, and parks, recs, trails, monuments, all of those things are the responsibility of counties and cities and towns and states.
mhm.
So even from a professional career development, if you're interested in environmental, what was your major, Denise?
Wildlife biology.
Exactly. So that would be the career pathway to go into the Bureau of Land Management.
No, Bureau of Land Management is really interesting because it has all sort of the leftover lands and leftover responsibilities. So we manage anything that's on a piece of land. So it can be, I I leased oil and gas. I've been in coal mines. So you go from that extreme to wilderness areas. So you can be
Interesting.
a geologist, any kind of ologist. That's what I say. Any kind of ologist is welcome in the Bureau of Land
Yeah,
Management.
I'm sure that there's so many science and STEM-based careers that can spider off into Bureau of
Exactly.
Land Management.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
So interesting. I look forward to talking to you more about it because it's such an interesting occupation and your experience with everything. But let's go ahead and come on to the next segment. We'll be right back with Dr. Alay Rice, to talk about some things that she'd like to talk about with regards to disparities and how Arizona can play and some other things. So we'll be right back after this message.
Dailies is the leading educational success platform that provides families with the resources they need to help their children succeed. Through live personalized classes with certified educators, rich daily reports, and 24/7 academic support, we provide you with a personalized learning solution designed specifically to help your child surpass their academic goals. We offer supplementary learning experiences through Dailies Pods and a full comprehensive homeschool option through Dailies School. Unlock personalized learning for your child with Dailies.
Okay, so we are back, and let's see now, Dr. Ale Gervais, and I hope I'm saying that correctly. It looks like Denise popped off, so we'll bring her back into the broadcast when she comes back. But I had the chance to meet with you back at our ribbon cutting when you were able to say a couple quick words of wisdom, and we were so excited. So we wanted to bring you back. So as part of that, welcome to Fit Friday Community Chat. Tell our audience a little bit about you, what you do, and why you're even here in support of what we're trying to do.
Yes, thank you, Lucy. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited about, the Force for Health Arizona. And since the ribbon cut, I'm really hoping that everyone's kind of still has that motivation and still has a little fire in their bellies, especially to kind of beat Pennsylvania and Ohio and all the other states. Or like Ohio mentioned, it's a win-win for us all. But like you mentioned, Lucy, my name is Dr. Ayla Gervais. I'm a naturopathic medical doctor here in Arizona. And, I'm originally not from Arizona. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and which kind of segues into what I wanted to speak about. The first thing that I think we need to touch on is the access to health and the gap in the health disparities that is prominent in our communities. And, Denise, I didn't know you're for a Brooklyn gal too, so
Okay, yes.
it's good to connect that. But, growing up in New York, what I saw was, everything was from the block. Everything that I learned was from the block. My grocery store was the bodega or the corner store. So everything I ate came from there. I am fortunate, my family, my parents are from Sudan. And so there was that aspect of the culture that I think saved me. A lot of my friends and family that are just from Brooklyn, they ate from the bodega. That's just what we did. And so it was very common for members in my community to, have heart attacks at younger ages. Everybody had diabetes. Everybody had hypertension. Us, even as kids, we kind of knew oh yeah, this person has diabetes and this person has diabetes. We're probably going to get it, but we didn't know what it was. And we didn't know if we could stop it. We just thought it was something that ran in the family. And so when I became interested in medicine, I was a biology major in undergrad. I always had kind of like a thing for science. And initially I wanted to do emergency medicine. And so I worked in emergency medicine for a while. And so I started seeing a lot of the emergency issues. The underlying cause was a metabolic issue, something that the metabolism has gone wrong a long time ago. And now this person's having a heart attack or a stroke or whatever the case may be. And now it's an emergency case and we have to intervene in an emergent way. And I started thinking about what if there are ways to prevent some of these issues. And so I started digging, and I really got into preventative medicine. And that's how I found naturopathic medicine. It is really catered towards prevention of these issues and also how to deal with chronic diseases. And it's kind of like a way for, or a segue to teach healthy people in the time being, like myself, or all of us now. We're doing okay. We feel good. But if we don't pay attention to what our bodies are actually going through and what we're doing, what we're eating, how we're moving, how we're sleeping, all these things, eventually over time, it can lead to that to those diabetes, those metabolic issues, that cardiovascular issues, endocrine issues, that are so common in my community. Personally, I remember in medical school, every time they would mention any of these metabolic diseases, and it was like the number one in African American and Hispanic or Latino communities. It was so uh, it was just such a like, this is the number, they're the highest risk, especially women of color, like they're the highest risk for all these issues. And I would ask why, and there was never a clear answer. And it goes to the access to healthcare, and it makes me think of growing up in Brooklyn and not seeing anything like that. Like, maybe we had bananas in the corner store, maybe, but it wasn't like we didn't have Whole Foods. You had to take a train and go all the way uptown or to Manhattan to have access to those things. And so that's the number one issue. And now lately, now that I'm in Arizona, and it's different, as you can, as you were mentioning, Denise, it's a whole different environment out here. And so what I started noticing when I moved down to South to Arizona, and when I spent time in California as well, that's when I started becoming interested in health for myself and wanting to kind of like work out and eat right. And so I started doing the YouTube thing, and there's so much information. And it's like, where do you even start? You wake up one day and you're like, all right, I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to drink a gallon of water, eat my best of juicing, yada, 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 but you have no direction. And so I noticed that now that we have more access to these things, like we have access to information online that's free, we also have access to more of these like healthy food stores, clinics, or clinicians that are trained this way. However, we don't know where to start. And so the gap now is the information, and the gap in the knowledge and where it's coming from. And so something that I love that Dr. Rob did with Force for Health is when I was going in there and I was looking at all the videos and all the different modules that he has you go through, the information is accurate and it's coming from a source that's reliable. And so that's the number one gap right now, is getting information that's actually reliable and something that you can actually learn from and implement. And I think another thing is, now that we, like, for especially for me and for you ladies, once we start learning, when we go back to our communities and we start teaching them, and then we bring that awareness within that community. As a clinician, spending time in underprivileged or underserved areas, I found it more valuable to teach people, instead of giving you this, if I'm giving you insulin because I know you have diabetes, I can also talk to you, maybe even if it's for a quick 10 minutes, about what it is that you need to be mindful of, how you need to move. And every time, just giving people nuggets of information makes the biggest difference. So I know I rambled, but
No, but well,
yeah.
I mean, listen, you are a plethora of information, and what we are really trying to do is impact. Well, first of all, the healthcare workforce is
Right.
in shambles, right? There's been
Hmm.
so much exit from this space, and we were
Hmm.
already starting from kind of a non-diverse healthcare workforce
Right,
already.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
one of our missions and pillars is to really help build this ecosystem and help build a more diverse healthcare workforce. So,
Yes.
how old were you when you came to Arizona? And how old were you when you actually said, holy cow, I can actually go that career path and
Hmm.
actually want to be a doctor? I know you talked about
Yeah.
why, but like when? How old were you?
Yeah. Yeah, so my family moved to Arizona from Brooklyn when I was 16. And as a 16-year-old, I didn't think like, okay, I wanted to do this. Not at all. Um, it wasn't until I was 22 and I was working in the emergency room here at St. Joseph's in Arizona. And that's when I started. My own health was kind of in shambles in a way. Like, I relied on coffee, and that's just what I did. And I maybe ate a salad, maybe if I did eat, like I wasn't being mindful of what I was doing. I was kind of like work, work, work. And that was the environment that I was in. And a lot of healthcare professionals, that's how they live. It's kind of like do, and you don't take care of yourself. However, I also didn't have that knowledge Lucy, which is why I was like, I need to figure out how I can teach myself these things. And then when I was overwhelmed with the information, because there's so much, and because we have access to so much information, it's very hard to follow one thing. It's just you don't know what's the actual truth versus like, is this going to help me? Is this what I need to do? Do I need to be doing this? And your health, that can also cause some side effects along, down the line. And so I was 23 when I found the naturopathic medical school in Arizona. And I just stopped in, and I was fortunate enough to like sit in on a few lectures and cases and kind of saw how they interacted with patients. And it was just a whole different approach to medicine.
What's
Mhm.
the pathway? How long did it take you?
Yeah.
And what does that course look like?
Yeah, so it's a 4-year medical school. So your first 2 years, it's kind of resembles the allopathic medical school model for the first 2 years. You're learning basically like the pathologies, pharmacology, diagnosis, labs, and kind of being able to be a clinician, see people, diagnose them, and use, medicine like pharmacology, medicine to treat them. The following 2 years, then you become more of we have a lot of training in nutrition, botanical medicine, which is basically using herbs, as well as physical medicine, exercise medicine, kinesiology. We spend a lot of time focusing on sleep. And so you kind of have like this double, you know, I really feel like naturopathic doctors, we have a very important role when it comes to prevention, like I mentioned
Hmm.
earlier, and chronic disease, because we learn both sides in a way. We're not like your emergency doctors. Like, we're not going to go in there and perform emergency surgery on you. Like, you got to go to the ER for that. But we can take care of the everyday person who's just either going through something that hasn't been successfully managed with medicine or like drugs, or someone who maybe is dealing with some kind of issue in the family that wants to change that. Um, I tell people, especially like people of color, like we always say, like, oh, I'm going to break the generational curse. And we always talk about finances when it comes to that. And I'm like, well, your health is a big one too. You change your genes, and those are the genes that you will pass down. And, we're educated in teaching people how to do that.
We have a program called Advance the Dream, right?
Hmm.
And it really is trying to carry Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy on in terms of health inequities and disparities as the
Hmm.
biggest injustice of all. And when you talk about, some disparities there, it's real. The toxicity
Hmm.
of stress over centuries of, um, you know, challenge, suffering, the stresses
Absolutely.
just weren't there for others. Um, I wanted to perhaps just play one video from this series, and then maybe we can talk about it. Looks like my our next guest, Dr. Gilio, he is post-surgery, so he was kind of a
Hmm.
50-50, and that's okay, because that just means we
Oh,
get to
yeah.
extend our conversation out with Dr. Duray here. But let's watch that for a second, because I want to get your opinion. Now, most of the videos on our site are student produced. So when
Mhm.
Dr. Dre is talking about, here's some great content, it's physician led, but here is a 1 minute video just on the introduction to the history of American African Americans. And this is a challenge that we're looking for people just to consume 10 little videos. And this is just the introduction of such. Let's just look at this really fast.
The history of African Americans in the United States is commemorating a major year. 2019 marks 400 years since slaves first arrived in America. What has transpired since has been the story of a people searching for equality, respect, and freedom. To fully realize this dream, we must understand the history of their struggles, triumphs, tribulations, and the movements that today define a new generation of those seeking to build on their forebears' successes. Understanding the history of African Americans is imperative to understanding where our country has been and the decisions and actions of the years to come will define the future and legacy of not only this generation, but of many generations to follow. The lessons in this course will bring understanding to the past, and with this knowledge, we can shape a brighter future.
Now, those were words taken from a physician who is a national leader in infant mortality rates, Dr. James Author. And then our interns learned how to use platforms to create content and went ahead and did that. But part of this whole healthy citizenship, deal that we're trying to do is creating cultural sensitivity, creating empathy, and just creating more of an acknowledgement that disparities exist. It's not just an individual decision to be healthy or not. Do you how, and you talked about access to healthcare. That's a major social determinant of health. How do you see the state of Arizona? You're from New York. You obviously moved here when you were a teenager. Now kind of naturopathic, perspective. How do you see the state of Arizona compared to other states when it comes to the adoption and the availability of naturopathic PDs like yourself?
Yeah. So, Arizona is actually one of the most open state to it, like as far as insurance and stuff like that. And so it can be covered within certain insurance companies. And so with that, obviously there's still a gap and still like restrictions for a lot of people, because if you're not going to use your insurance, well, then guess what? You're going to pay out of pocket. And so that's definitely something that I've seen. We do get a specific type of, member, specific community that is more into that. That's who we serve more. Not because we don't, it's not like that's who we want to just serve. It's because of the access. And so
does Medicaid pay for like a naturopathic care?
So it depends. So certain things they will, certain things they won't. So again, it's only some things that you'll have access to, and you would have to have failed so many different other things to have it covered. And it's literally a fight. For the most part, Medicare or Medicaid will not. Certain private insurances can. Most people pay cash. People pay out of pocket, and they do so because they're not getting what they're looking for when it comes to the other side of medicine, or that aspect of our medical system. However, that does then give us a huge gap into like who will have access. What I'm trying to do, and my mentors and the different physicians that I've been working with, whether naturopathic or allopathic, like the MDs or DOs, is putting information out there as much as we can that is free and accessible to people. I think that's the most important thing right now, because a lot of the things that we can teach you are things that you can implement in your own life without having to pay for it. Like going outside and getting sun at certain times of the day to help regulate your circadian rhythm, which then will regulate your metabolism, which then will do all this other great things and help you build bone and muscle and get your hormones in order. And technically, you don't really need to pay someone to do that. Are there people that do? Yes, there are people that pay a lot of money for advice in certain things like that. So that's something that I've noticed in Arizona. Of course, driving through Arizona, you'll start to notice the different communities, the different neighborhoods, and the different access to healthcare, grocery stores that people have. If you go all the way to Avondale and past, you won't see a Sprouts and a Whole Foods anymore. You have different grocery stores now. So I think we're progressing, and I think the major push is that there are a lot more, people of color that are in this field that are now starting to push to their communities. I think that's the most important thing, and I keep going back to that, is like you have to go back and you have to teach what you know. And like I can't hold all this information and not let all of my family and my sisters and my brothers in Brooklyn learn about it too. It'd be unfair. Like the reason why I learned it is so that I can pass it on.
I love that, because Dr. Rob's mantra and our Force
Yeah.
for Health mantra is learn it, live it, share it, right?
Yes,
Learn it,
yes.
live it, share it. And that's why on the serve is really where
Mhm.
you're sharing it. When you're sharing
Right.
information with those you love, you're serving others. Denise, I am taking control of questions. I want to pop in. And do you have anything you'd like to ask Dr. Dre? Oop,
I think you're
I think
muted.
she's doing
yeah,
a really
there you
good
go.
job, because one, I think there's an opportunity with younger people to
Mhm.
reach them. There are older people who will never change. Okay, it's just
Well,
the
that's
way.
what you think. That's what you think, Denise. But they'll change once you start really putting those nuggets. It's all about
Yeah,
just putting that
yeah,
information and whispering it in their ears.
And
yeah,
supporting them without
Yes.
making them feel like
yeah.
Yes.
they need help.
Help.
I
Yeah,
believe that's the
Absolutely.
balance.
that's the way to do it.
Mhm.
And the pocketbook. If we can show them that, because it is healthier you
Yeah.
are, the
Right.
better off
Right.
you can be economically as
Absolutely.
well. But it's
Mhm.
very, I think, just for hitting on a lot of key points, I remember in probably it's about 2000, a friend and I were going to have a herbal medicine conference because they didn't call it
Ah.
naturopathic and it was herbal medicine, right? We are
Yeah.
going to have the first herbal medical conference in Phoenix. That
Mhm.
we could not get that thing off the ground. I
Yeah.
had I
Yeah.
had a professor from Cornell, one of the top experts, was going to come in and speak, and people were just
Mhm.
nah, no, 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 no. So it's so funny for me to see now. I'm very excited that we
Mhm.
are getting there now.
Right.
That
Now it's like people
people
are open to
that
it.
people are, well, yeah, much more open to the suggestion.
Right.
But what I,
Right.
look at, and again, I'm in the baby boomer group, but the disparities show up really big time there in the baby boomers
Mhm.
between the different ethnic groups.
Right.
Okay,
Absolutely.
average lifespan Native American 62, you know,
Mhm.
and African Americans a little bit higher, and then white men have the highest. Okay,
Mhm.
so but it really shows up when you get to the baby boomer stage, the
Mhm.
disparities that exist. But I think we have an opportunity at My Healthy Arizona to change some of that because it really starts when you're young. When I had
Mhm.
Linking Sports and Communities, which is a nonprofit youth sports group, so we were, our goal was to keep kids in school and have healthy lifestyles. And people are going, healthy lifestyles? What is that? It's like, again, I started this 2004, right? So it's like healthy lifestyles, they're athletes.
Right.
So athletes,
Right.
healthy, but student athletes are not that healthy, as
Mhm.
you probably can
Mhm.
attest
Right.
to. There's binging on the weekends. There's
Right. Right.
eating,
Stress,
yeah,
Yeah. The stress
right,
of
inability
like.
to
Mhm.
eating
cope, and
fast
Mhm.
food all the time.
Right.
yep.
Right.
And taking steroids and stuff. That's a whole nother aspect of it.
Mhm.
So I think, it's at all generations that we need to pay attention to. But I think if we
Right.
start younger, getting people in the right mindset, that'll work well.
Mhm.
But I'm really thrilled with what she's talking about, to see that now we have younger
Yeah.
people here in Arizona that are spreading the word. And we're really
Yes.
excited to have her part of Force for Health.
Well, if
Yeah.
you, Alay, if you were to look back at your 14-year-old self, your 15-year-old
Mhm.
year old self, right? The fact that you were working in an emergency room when you're 22 means that
Mhm.
somebody had already influenced you towards health, anyways, right?
Right. Right.
So go back to middle school.
Mhm.
What kind of middle schooler were you? Were you like a perfect grade person? Were you like the popular one? Were you the shy one? Like, how were you in middle school?
Yeah. I definitely wasn't the popular one. I was more of like the one that was getting bullied. And so I kind of stuck to like getting my schoolwork done because I didn't really talk to to the other students as much. I didn't have a lot of friends. And so my whole thing was I got to get out of this school. I was like in like for better words like in the hood. Like we had teachers coming and going. We didn't have a science teacher for almost a year. Our English
Are you
teachers would come and go.
That makes me
So
so sad
yeah, yeah.
that
So that's the
something as pivotal and integral
right.
as science just didn't get
Right.
the attention to give you quality.
Right,
servicing
right. And
for
it
in
was
middle
basically
school too.
right, right. And so it was basically like more of like a babysitter, all the teachers that we did have, the ones that did stick through, and it was tough for them. The students weren't the easiest, the conditions weren't the best, the resources were not there. But I had a few good teachers, an excellent principal who I will never forget because she pushed for us. And in New York, at the way it worked back then is there's like a nationwide exam or test that everyone has to take, and if your school scores a certain grade, then you can get more funds. However, if you didn't meet that, then they're like, oh, figure it out. But again, we didn't have the resources that could support the students in order for them to get the grades, and so
Yeah.
we were in this like stuck. We were so stuck, but she really fought for us and kind of got a bunch of other professors from NYU to come in and volunteer. And we would literally go back to school Saturday and Sunday. And that's how I learned. Like, that's how I learned English. That's how I started reading. That's how I learned science. And
By
so
enriching your effort on the weekends.
absolutely. So my weekends, I was back in school, and the principal would reopen the school on the weekends, and our parents could come. They would provide little snacks if they could. They tried their best to kind of at least get some kind of movement going. And if it wasn't for that, I don't know what I would have done. Because of that program, I was able to get into a decent high school in New York, and that made all of the difference. I struggled, I really struggled, even into college, even into medical school, not having that foundation in my education early on. It took me a lot longer to, get the studying down, get to be able to pick things up that my classmates would pick up so easily. And I had to, go the extra mile, get my tutors, spend extra time with the information in order to, let it all sink in, and in order for me to gain it. And it really starts there. And that's why I agree, with everything that you were saying, Denise, and everything that you were mentioning earlier, Lucy. I'm starting younger. Like, if I can get into like high schools and middle schools, even if they're not really listening, like if you could just start just pouring into them, it makes a big difference.
Well, and that's why I am excited to be bold with Denise, and
Hmm.
why Denise is like my perfect partner here to actually help launch Arizona and then Pennsylvania in a couple weeks,
Yeah.
because it's going to take some bold folks to
Hmm.
challenge the current status of K through 8 and
Right.
9 through 12. And I'm not talking test scores. So
No.
just take standardized test scores out. But if there is a school in a neighborhood and it's got 10 companies within 5 minutes of that school, and they don't have any health classes because they can't hire a PE teacher, or they're just not
Hmm.
having access to internet, shame on that community, shame on the leaders, because the
Hmm.
schools
Absolutely.
are not shouldn't be shouldered, right? The teachers shouldn't be
Hmm.
shouldered with burden for Wi-Fi. So, connectivity is huge, and I want to make sure that values given to health
Right.
science. You look at, yes, health is not on the spectrum of standardized testing. That's why it doesn't get funds. So when you talk to
Hmm.
PE teachers, they're on their own to go find the funds and bring support in. So it's a big reason
Right.
why we're trying to do. And thank you for recognizing that.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to
No,
make sure
yeah.
that, middle school girls right now, if you think about it, wow, how
Hmm.
Oh, yeah.
enveloped they are, because they've had a phone in their hands since 6 years
Right.
old, 8 years old,
Right.
10 years old. Uh, what could be like your words of wisdom to your 14-year-old self then? Maybe before you started doing the weekend stuff, like when you were
Yeah.
kind of there going, wow, what would
Yeah.
your words of wisdom to your middle school self be?
I would say, just believe in yourself, follow your gut, and be open. Like, just don't be afraid. It's okay if you're different. Just be open, and don't the one thing that I urge young girls is don't quiet your voice. If you have something to say, speak up. If you have a question, speak up, even if it means the class is going to laugh at you or make fun of you. Just learn that at a young age because it follows you. It follows you all the way to your adulthood. So you have a voice for a reason and use it.
I love that. One of the clubs and the teams that will be activating within the network is called My Girl Power, right? And
Oh,
My Girl Power is all about getting more women leaders around the C-suite, both in the public
mhm.
space, so more women congressional leaders, in the House and representing in the public, but also in the boardroom.
I
And
love that.
the first premise, in fact, when Rob and I first met, I had My Girl Power, he had Force for Health, and we both used those 4 rings, right? My Girl
Ah.
Power brand was kind of on the side, but that inner ring was know your voice. And I truly
Mhm.
believe that if we can hit middle school girls and make sure that they've
Mhm.
got confidence of voice, that has so much upside from, domestic abuse
Right.
or
Absolutely.
pathways and all of those things. So you hit it on the nail there. Obviously my Dr. Rob was off, and I did just get some messaging from my girlfriend who was having a hard time reaching this broadcast, so that's why we talked all the way
Oh,
through this segment.
oh no,
um,
it was a pleasure. I'm having a great time.
yeah, exactly. And so part of what, we'll kind of lean in towards this whole kind of gamification deal. What we're really trying to do is, and we were talking about it earlier this week, Denise, is, do you know that high schools and colleges actually have interscholastic competition for video gaming?
Mhm.
This has all kind of sprouted up in the last 5 years. It's called
Yeah.
esports. And
Esports.
and there's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, if
Mhm.
that's how you feel like that's how you're going to compete, that's the inner athlete in you. And now I'm exposed to a career of all these information systems and tech and design. Awesome. Great.
Mhm.
But it also does kind of proliferate sitting on a couch and, playing a video game and having, some violence. And there's just some things around that space that I'm not too excited about. But
Mhm.
what if so each school team actually has a video gaming team. Well, what if we could create this concept called STEAM teams, like this cubed STEAM teams, where we're forming clubs and groups at schools that want to team up. It's STEAM cubed because you've got your STEAM, technology, engineering, arts, and math, but it's led by students who are taking extraordinary actions and measures, and they're mentoring and coupling up with social thought leaders engaged in actions that matter. So that's just one how we get to the STEAMs cubed. Teams are obviously think, eat, act, move, and socialize. So that's one aspect, but we're also focused on teens and encouraging accountable measures that address the social determinants of health. Instead of a science fair, which I love science, so nothing against science fairs, but a science fair experiment type addressing social determinants of health that matter the most to them is really what we're trying to get to. And then, of course, together, everybody achieves more. And then that team then gets together and then they create a healthy idea. So they identify an issue, they develop a plan, they engage the community, they assess the effectiveness, and then they share their idea. And so that is what we are trying to catapult here. And it
Right.
might take a year or two to get there, but my vision is that we actually have these competitive STEAM
Mhm.
teams empowering teens and addressing social determinants of health so that we can close the gaps that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. I think
Um,
that's a great idea, adding a little bit of competition, making it fun.
yeah, I
Like
think
really
that
getting
that's
everyone engaged.
and especially, when we start looking at county lines, neighborhood
Mhm.
lines, start looking at if we're looking at a sub-performing school, it's probably not the school's fault. I mean, how does the community come in and actually make sure that they have resources necessary for better outcomes
Absolutely.
there? So if we are coming up on the hour, we are launching. We have another show actually on Thursdays. We talked about the familial unit earlier about how it's not impossible to help our seniors, right? It just takes a little bit of guidance and support. So on Thursday, we have my Fit Family Force, really for moms, dads, seniors, and seniors interested in playing. Arizona is activating now. In Pennsylvania, will come up October 12th. That's the official date. So if you are a leader in the state of Arizona and you are interested in getting involved, myhealthyarizona.com is the site. Oops, sorry about that. And Denise, I don't mean to take your face off there at the bottom.
No problem.
And but myhealthyarizona.com points to our network, and you can sign up for free, start getting involved, and we will start really connecting like-minded people that are all on the same page of improving population health outcomes for communities that care. And I am on a mission to help Arizona be a frontline leader with that. I'm so excited to be working with Denise here. So final words of wisdom as we lean into the weekend here?
No, I was just, there's a lot of emphasis now on the wealth gap with African Americans in particular in this country, and how that legacy is carried on in a negative way. And it's the same thing here that we're talking about education and the health gap. The problems start very young. Women in childbirth, African American women dying right in the beginning in childbirth, and things like that. So I think what we'll be doing is helping to bring some attention, because they have specials and documentaries now on the wealth gap, African Americans. The health gap is equally important. It's equally important. And the education gap, to me, underlies everything. I was lucky in that my parents are pretty forward thinking. And you're talking about New York. New York is a little special. They're fanatics about education, more so than any place I've seen. So, but if you didn't go to the right high school, you don't get into the right college, you don't go to the right junior high school, you don't get into the right high school. It goes like that. So,
especially in New York, I feel like New York is hyper that type of, because of probably the density of people and the competition.
Yeah, competition is everything.
Yeah, exactly. And the state of Arizona, we've talked a lot about African American disparities. In the state of Arizona, I believe it's about a 5 to 6%. We really are heavy Hispanic, probably 43% Hispanic. And then, of course, we've got 22 tribal nations across the state, from northwest, south, and east. So lots of issues to address. We'll take them, a week at a time, and just start pulling in folks that really care. That's it, right? So again, in order to play in the reality health games, which officially, if you've got a membership, which again, you can start for free, or it's all of like $49 for the year. All of your learn it, move it, serve, and earn points would count for your community, your county, and your state. As we move to Fit Fridays in October, we'll actually be doing leaderboard review and prize giveaways, which will be kind of fun. So this is still in the group leader recruitment advisory role setup. So let us know if you'd like to get involved. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Get out there, move, learn, serve, and earn. And thank you for joining us, Dr. Dre.
Of course. Thank you both so much for, being the faces of this and being bold and pushing it forward.
That's right.
I'm happy to be a part.
Okay. Talk to you guys later, and take care.
Very good.